Well, I guess we should get started. We're already almost 5 minutes in. We have quorum now. This is the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development, our Affordable Housing Subcommittee. The meeting has now commenced. It's August 10th at 4 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you only use the chat function to request to speak or to announce that you are leaving the meeting so that we can track quorum. Also, in order to comply with the open state meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. So I'll take roll. I have myself, Sharia Jimenez, Marianne Bierling.
I am here.
Olga Flores is not here unless that's the Zoom user. I don't think so. Maggie Amato Tejas also not here. And Jim Toffel.
Present.
Okay, and then we also have with us our ex officio, Megan Headings.
Here.
Corin Manning.
Here.
Betty Viegas. I don't think I see Betty. Jason Heisey. Here. Not present. Marcos Ismael.
Here.
And David Wolf.
Yep.
Hi, David.
Hi.
All right, call to the audience. This is the time when any member of the public may address, and I think we have a few guests with us as well. Sorry, looks like, I don't know who is. I see Kyle Snowden and then the Zoom user and Dan Bursick. Call to the audience. This is a time when any member of the public may address the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting law, commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as an agenda item for a future meeting. Would anyone from the public like to speak? Okay. Well, hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the QAP discussion. This is supposed to be facilitated by Jim and Ann.
I'll just say, I think the point of having this meeting before next week, there was talk of having some sort of joint effort to approach to ADOH from whether it's the Affordable Housing Subcommittee of our commission or Tucson Development and etc. But I think having some sort of joint effort asking for changes to the QAP is what was discussed last time. And I'll let you take over, Jim.
So, yeah, so there's, as Ann said, we've got the housing forum next week. I just want to review, just to current on everybody's mind, things we talked about last month. So some of the feedback that we talked about is having some sort of geographic dispersion of tax credits based on population. And I think the comment that Jason Heisey made was that Tucson has 14% of the population, and we've gotten, I don't remember the exact number, was it 7% or 6% of the tax credits over the last year? And then Section 8, the 85705 is in the IID, but is dinged in the QAP because it doesn't get the 10 points, which hurts us. So we talked about internally adding a revitalization area that's not underserved, for example, the 29th Street corridor, which would be something that would be done by the City of Tucson Housing Department. Potentially adding a Tucson Pima County set aside. Tucson's limited with the number of employers with 250 employees in a single location, so that hurts us. And based on the city's financials, the city can support a maximum of 2 projects per year, which also hurts us because if one of those projects doesn't score well in the QAP, then we really just get 1 project a year. The choice neighborhood set aside is really set up for a Phoenix project, which again is hurting us further. So section 7, the gap funding currently says that it's 500,000 per project. We're going to ask that it be lowered to 350,000 per project. That would enable us to support a 3rd project. Section 4, community revitalization plan. We want to know if it can be initiated versus fully adopted. The other comment going back to the areas is Tucson only has 8 zip codes in the downtown core. So when they start cutting zip codes out, it has a disproportionate impact on us. And potentially a way to get around that is if they define a revitalization area that will trump the zip code penalty. And that's it. So I guess I don't remember the action item here, Shay. Were we going to continue to try to vet these out, or were we going to try to send a letter, or are we just gonna is that, I guess the next step is talk about how we want to provide that feedback?
I mean, there was a few good suggestions. I remember the letter for sure, I think we should do, but also I think it was Jason who had mentioned that, you know, letters only go so far and maybe we just need to sit down and, you know, actually schedule a meeting and meet with officials, which I think I agree. I think that's probably going to be the most effective. Meet with ADOH, you know, whoever the you know, maybe I don't know if it's the head, we need to go all the way to the top, or I don't know who exactly in the chain of command is the appropriate person, but.
So who would it be best to initiate that? Would it be somebody from the housing department or one of us?
I mean, we're a new commission. I remember us also discussing, you know, just the need to introduce ourselves, maybe even to ADOH in general. But I feel like this, I mean, I do feel like this is one of the most important subcommittees up on, you know, as far as like immediate need and trying to respond to the immediate need. So I don't know, you know, I don't know if we want to do that as, you know, as a subcommittee or as a whole commission in general, or I'm not sure even what makes sense in our chain of command, you know, considering we're new. But I don't know. I'm open to suggestions.
Marianne?
Well, first of all, I think it should be something that is written from the whole commission, and not just the housing committee, and possibly that there are members from, you know, the whole commission going up. But I'm wondering if the mayor's office, since this is her commission, would want to initiate that conversation to have us be able to, you know, go to Phoenix and meet with members of the staff, including the director.
And what are your thoughts on that?
I
think we can certainly ask. You know, I don't know what the mayor's office will say, but we can certainly inquire. I think also you all can, like, you all are a function of appointed by mayor and council. So I also think, you know, you are also welcome to try to talk to them and reach out. I think in terms of timeliness, if we want to have something sooner than later for next week, or for if they're opening up comments after next week, I think it's something that would have to be done fairly quickly. What I can absolutely do too is, I think this was brought up last time, I'm not sure, you know, we were meeting sort of monthly with ADOH with the mayor's office, and so we can inquire if there's a meeting like that getting scheduled back on the books. I think that might be a good time. So we're open. We can inquire from the mayor's office certainly about those monthly meetings and sort of kind of what level of interest they would have, but that's up to them, and you all as commissioners can also do that.
Marianne?
In this particular case with the QAP and how important it is, I really think that physical presence, you know, at ADOH is going to say a lot in terms of people actually being willing to drive up and have this conversation with them, and being in front of them, you know, being able to meet each other and everything else that comes with relating to people in person. I think it's important. And I would hope that that is what we would decide to do.
Hey, Jim.
Yo.
Yeah, this is Jason Heisey.
Hey.
So number one, ADOH is not having in-person meetings right now. Every meeting you have with them is virtual. So if you want to get in front of them, the best time obviously is going to be next week. I would think the point of contact that would be the best, that could leverage your time the best, would be with Ruby. Yeah. You're not going to get anything from Stemplot. He's going to give you the politically correct responses. But if you want to dig into the issues, the real issues, it would be with Ruby Dillon. And again, I think, you know, I would not go for a formal, hey, this is the commission, blah, 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 because then you're going to be in that space of formality. I think it needs to be critical players in Tucson and Tucson municipality having a conversation, sitting down with Ruby, and whether it's over lunch or breakfast or whenever she can block out an hour of time over the next 3 days. If she can't block an hour out for 1 million people, then there's a problem. So
what do you think about us inviting her to the next one of our subcommittee meetings?
I mean, you know, I'm kind of a cynic with that stuff, Jim, because I hear the happy talk in these formal meetings, and then nothing gets done. I mean, if you really want to leverage them, you're going to need to have the hard conversation. They're disenfranchising 1/7 of the state. They're awarding 5% of the credits to 14% of the population. I mean, that has to be drilled home. That is not right. And it needs to be said in a way that is impactful. I mean, throwing 63 units to Tucson last year in the special set aside is embarrassing. It's humiliating, and it's condescending. And if we don't approach it with that type of an attitude, we're not getting anything, guys. I'm telling you, we're not getting anything. Phoenix will get their due, and the balance of state right now is a big issue. And they're pushing units to the balance of state. So really, when I'm saying Tucson should push for a Pima County set aside, I honestly mean it, because it is the out parcel in this thing. We are on the outside looking in. We are not Phoenix. we do not have that kind of flexibility with our parcels and financing. We are not the balance of state. We don't get all the special bells and whistles. We're something in between. And that has to be expressed to them. I mean, I don't understand how the state hasn't looked at this. I mean, I can tell you guys that we at my company in La Frontera, we have lobbied this, and we have expressed our displeasure with this numerous times to everybody up there. And I just think that if the city could get ahead of this thing, could get in front of this thing and really lobby on their behalf, it would help all of us.
Sarah?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in, when we met with Cherie, just to do our sort of check-in that we have often. She did mention that there will be a redlined QAP that's going to be released on the 12th. So they're working on redlining the QAP right now with, I don't know what that input is for filling that, but once we know that that's been released, I'll make sure that I send that out to the whole committee so that you can see their first stab at changing it. And then that might also inform, you know, some of the things that we might have to say. Maybe there's something that got fixed. That's wishful thinking, but potentially it might be something. So just keep that in mind. In a couple days, they're releasing the redline QAP.
Well, and the reason they're going to release that is because at the end of the housing forum, as you guys know, the last session is comments on the QAP. So there's a 2-hour session at the very end of the conference. So I think it's at 1 o'clock, where you sit down and Ruby or whoever, Cherie, will go through the whole QAP, and they'll go through item by item, and they'll introduce their new changes. So it'll be in front of everybody. I mean, we'll have a chance to see it, digest it, comment. But I mean, I get it. I mean, we can stand up and talk and express our views, and we can type in comments to the QAP and type in suggestions. But I mean, if we don't start lobbying and advocating for ourselves in a passionate way, we are going to continue to get what we've always gotten, which is the short side of the population on a per unit basis. It happens every year.
Yeah, I happen to agree. David?
I agree in part with what Jason said, but not all. Certainly Ruby is the primary, should be the primary point person, since she's the policy person and she's the most familiar with LIHTC. I disagree that Tom should not be brought into it. He is the director, he's the boss. And I have, now it's ancient history, but I remember when Mike Traylor was director, and when he had just started, and this was when tax credit exchange was implemented, and the tax credit side of the shop was absolutely adamant that they weren't going to do tax credit exchange for a bunch of ridiculously stupid reasons. We went to Traylor, and he said, no, we're going to do it. So I think keeping Tom in the loop is a good thing. I do not think it would be useful to have Ruby or Sherry or even Tom participate in one of these meetings. I just think they're too amorphous. I think the direct approach, either at the forum or, yes, they're not doing in-person meetings, but we could do a Zoom with them, or something. You could do a Zoom. I'm merely an ex officio member of this. Could go one-on-one, but I think having them participate in this meeting would not be terribly helpful.
Tom's pretty new, and I haven't gotten a real sense of what kind of leader he is yet, because Michael Traylor was a very strong leader, obviously. The last director, not as much. So I haven't gotten a sense on how Tom's going to be, but he is relatively new, and maybe we should invite them down we could take them around some of the downtown projects. So, Mary Ann's got a project. Jason, you've got your project downtown. We could take them to the Marist, just take them to the 3 projects and then sit down and just say,
Well, I'm sorry, aren't you forgetting something?
well, we could take them by yours as well, David. I mean, but you know what I'm saying is I was just trying to keep it, kind of contained to an hour or 2.
Actually, Ruby and Sherry came to the opening, so.
Yeah. But, I would assume that Tom's aware of that one because he was there while it was getting built.
Yeah.
But it would be nice, and I'm happy to talk to him while we're at the housing conference next week and see if we can lure him down for a tour of some of the historic projects that we've done.
Hey,
And
Jim,
then maybe we could try to do a sit down.
hey, Jim, but Simplot's been involved with the calls that were being done, the Tucson calls with the mayor and there was a lot of people on the call. I don't know who was all invited, but the mayor and Simplot were both on the calls, and we basically went through all of the Tucson stuff.
Oh.
And what was great and what was working and what was going to happen. And I think what needs to happen is I think the new administration wants to be helpful. I think they want to, I think they're trying to say yes to everything, and they're out there, and every time you have a meeting with them, it's somewhat positive. And then when the rubber hits the road, they speak with their money. They can give you the happy talk all day long, but when it comes down to it, they're judged by where they put their resources. And I think and our CEO has a great relationship with Simplot, Dan Ranieri, and he's on a one-on-one basis with the guy. And I think his motives, like any CEO, he's got the 30,000 foot vision of what he wants to see happen. But the people that are actually pulling the levers are the people in the staff positions. And I think they need to know what's happening. I mean, I know it's, when you hear the one crazy guy down in Tucson yelling and screaming about how we're getting taken to the cleaners every year, it can be dismissed. But I'm telling you, I've been saying it for almost a decade now. Even when we win, when we do the allocation and we look at how much we're getting, if you take the tribe out, Tucson gets the short end of the stick on a pro rata basis. And now with the new RAD, with the RAD award, it's going to go to Phoenix every single year. It's going to go to that Gorman project until they're done. So the Tucson house is going to sit, and it's not going to get redeveloped until Gorman's done with their Phoenix deal. So, these are the kind of things that would be great if from a leadership position. Tucson's got to get out front, and they got to fight for their units. They got to get up there and say, listen, people, you need to, and if you're not going to award 14% of the credits, then you need to allocate and set aside 14% for this population, for this MSA.
So Jason, what do you think is the best approach then?
Well, I'm a little bit crazy, Jim. I'm not a politician, obviously, and I think our voice has been heard. From the private development standpoint, we've expressed our displeasure profoundly. I think that the city needs to get. The city needs to get behind this, and I think they need to explain in an articulate way. Look at the numbers. Look at what's happened. Look at how the QAP is structured. Look at the structural disadvantages to our million people, and really make an argument to say, listen, this has to be fixed. And here are some solutions. I think we've mentioned them. Lowering the scoring categories. There's going to be some other changes though. It's going to be a whack-a-mole thing, Jim, when they put the QAP out, because they may try to fix something over here that's going to create something over here. So it's going to be. I'm interested to see what it actually looks like. But I would just say, I would encourage the city to be an advocate. Get out there, and when we get something like happened this year, throw your hands up. Get up there and say, what the heck?
How many conference next week? Megan, Ann, Mary Ann, I know Dave and Jason, you're there, right?
Yeah, me and Dee are here.
Marcos, you'll be there, Marcos? No? Well, I think as a start, let's eat, all of us who were at the feedback session, I think let's make a point in public. It may be the type of thing where it's just the squeaky wheel gets the oil and it has to come from multiple,
Yeah,
it has to be heard multiple times. So it's each feedback session, so they'll usually have 2 or 3 feedback sessions. Each feedback session, we should be consistent in the feedback that we're requesting. We can write a letter. We can, I wouldn't mind getting some help from you guys of let's be concise and bullet point out exactly, the ask. And, we can put it to mayor and council and HCD and engage them as well. Shay?
Yeah, I liked, I'm agreeing with Marcos's comment about I think it has to be also political, like Jason saying, there's only so far, hearing from a handful of developers is gonna go. I think there also has to be a political response, and and I know this isn't a priority for the mayor, and why not? Like, why not get her involved and schedule that meeting and get, get the people at the top, Liz Morales, to get them all to make our case politically.
Okay, I'll take that as an action item. Megan?
Just curious, Sarah, you said if the new one's being released, have the specific bullet items that you've talked about, Jim, those have not been shared as of now with ADOH. So any red line version is not going to represent those specific requests, correct?
I don't think we have yet, no.
Okay.
hey, Jim, I can tell you from our standpoint, what we've done with the Heisey Group in La Frontera, we have sent written comment to the department of changes that we think would make a more equitable QAP.
And are those consistent with what Jim just read out today? Jason?
The only thing that isn't is lowering the home fund award, the municipal award to 350. We didn't mention that.
Okay. I'm just wondering on timing, if it makes sense to try and get something out before that's released. I'm highly doubting that they would be taking any of that into consideration anyway, but just curious on timing of things.
If we try to send something tomorrow, you mean?
Yeah. Get it right out there so it's been said, and then we reinforce it at the meeting the following week.
I think each of us as individuals could send something out by tomorrow. I don't think it's possible as a subcommittee to do that. Mary Ann?
So do you all think that it would help if we got the Arizona Housing Commission involved in discussing things about Tucson also? I haven't seen them do anything like that, and they've been involved in some of these, discussions with us individually. I'm just wondering if that's an approach to make. And then also, I don't know, politically, Jason might just think this is nicey stuff, but maybe everybody on the commission and the mayor signs the letter that goes to the state.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I mean, it's good to be on the record. It's good to be on the record to say it's just not the individual developers that may have an issue, because that could be a sour grapes type conversation, but it's the entire community that's saying, listen, pay attention to what's going on down here. And for some of these commissions, and I'm not sure about the Arizona Housing Commission, most of these statewide housing boards and commissions are stocked by people who live in Phoenix.
We do have a housing coalition member who's part of the commission now. So we could talk to Joanna. So, David?
I wouldn't worry too much about getting something to them before they put out the red line version. I mean, hang on. They've been pretty good in the past, in my experience. And 2013 or 2022, the 2022 QAP was a great example of being willing to make major revisions between the first version and subsequent versions. I mean, the first version of last year's QAP looks very listless in terms of the scoring, like what eventually resulted. So I think it might make more sense to react to specific things we don't like and make suggestions of what we do want them to change than to sort of rush into doing a general comment. So I wouldn't worry too much about the die being cast when they issue their first draft of the red line version.
I would be surprised, David, if they don't have something in there about the community revitalization areas and the zip codes. I mean, from what we heard on the feedback we got was that there were going to be changes, but again, it's supposed to be a 2-year QAP, right?
Right.
I
That's
mean,
why I'm not expecting changes.
so it's like, okay, so it turns into almost,
Yeah.
that's a tough, and when you have, here's the thing that concerns me too, about the QAP, maybe not with you, Dave, because you won with the city, but the phase 2 piece of the QAP is the 10-pointer. So
Yeah.
anybody who did a project and can do another project within a quarter mile is going to get 10 points on top of everybody else. So everybody that won last year has an advantage over going in this year if
If
they have a parcel or if they have something next door. So there's a lot of smart people out there.
Didn't they have to
And,
identify it? Didn't they have to
First-
identify that it was going to be a 2-phase project?
yeah, but I mean, I'm sure if these guys are, if they have a parcel, if they have
Right.
something nearby, they can actually say, this is phase 1. I know on both of ours that we went in with, we identified both of our projects as phase 1.
Those 2 points categories should be mutually exclusive. I don't think that meets the intent of what they're going for.
Well, I mean, but isn't it kind of ironic that you can't be in a zip code that's had a deal in the last 10 years, but you can build something right, but you can build something right next door the next year.
Yep.
But then you won't double dip. But then the 10 point, but then they'll cancel each other out. So you're not going to be double dipping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Kyle?
I think that's actually intellectually justifiable.
Hi, I'm a member of the public. I didn't want to speak out of turn, but I just wanted to say, I know you mentioned that you were going to put together a list of bullet points to provide within the city. I'd appreciate it if you could supply those to me as well. I'm with a group called Tucson for Everyone, and I think that different housing organizations would love to rally behind this initiative because it sounds like all the different organizations in Tucson, it's something that we could all really get behind if the money is sort of systematically getting assigned elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Can you put your email in the chat? I'll send you what
Sure.
I've got.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a lot here, and I think we've got a couple of agenda items to get through. So my takeaway, what I think I heard everybody say is we're gonna try a multi-pronged approach where we're gonna give feedback at the housing forum next week. We're gonna do a letter from the group, and then we're gonna engage mayor and council with HCD and ask for them to also push for the same items. I will go ahead and type up the summary of the feedback items. I'll try to be a little bit more concise than the summary I gave at the beginning of this meeting. Anything I missed? Okay, good. Shay, it's back to you.
All right, let me see where we're at here in the agenda. Okay, action items. We have me, myself, and Jim here as facilitators. Jim, were you going to go into the housing? We have two items: the housing trust fund and zoning changes to the UDC. Jim, were you going to take the lead on the housing trust fund, I assume?
Sure, yeah. So I don't know if you guys heard, but the IRS issued guidance 2 weeks ago, I think it was, on how ARPA money can be used for affordable housing. And it's not necessarily related to Tucson exactly, but what I've been asked by a couple different developers is to try to help get some legislation through at the state level to put a portion of Arizona's ARPA money into the housing trust fund that could be used as a revolving loan. What I mean by that is, well, as an example, Nevada and I think Colorado both put in $400 and $600 million from ARPA into their housing trust funds. And what they do is they loan that to projects as a 1% loan to help fill any gaps. And it primarily goes against 4% tax credit deals. The state of Arizona received a $1.2 billion ARPA. I guess there's $1.2 billion that's currently unallocated. And what I'm hoping that the state can do is put half of that into the housing trust fund. And as you know, so they'll give loans, and then as the loans are repaid, they can reissue that money out to other projects. So it becomes a revolving source of financing to help fill gaps on projects. I think that'll have an unbelievable impact on the amount of affordable housing that's built in our state. So we were going to engage a representative up in Phoenix, Christian Solario. He's an architect who sits on the House, but he did not win his re-election campaign 2 weeks ago or last week or whenever that was. So I guess what I'm asking is, does anybody know somebody who might be able to help us kind of take this on and get it through? So Marianne, do you want to go?
I'm not related to this conversation. I actually had a question about the agenda. So when your conversation is over, if I could ask, I'd appreciate it.
Yep. Sarah or Megan?
I don't know that I have anything to help or support, but I am curious, do you know the balance? Because my understanding is that 75%, don't quote me on that percentage, but 75% of the funds still has to be intended for the rental assistance or the eviction prevention programs. Is that true? Or some of the specific initial support programs that they were intended to before that it can be repurposed? So do we know the actual amount that's remaining for the state? Okay.
I don't. The guys I'm working with are trying to get the copy of the legislation that was passed in Nevada to use as a template for Arizona.
Okay.
But I don't know the answer to that.
And then the only other, I would hate for unintended consequences in this, as you know, I know Marianne's organization, our organization are working on of the eviction prevention, and I am pleased to see that we can use this for, potential development opportunities and that it is being repurposed, but I'm also fearful that it's going to pull from potential opportunities to help folks facing eviction now. And I would specifically hate, because Pima County at large has been such a good distributor of those assistance funds, and we've been able to recapture a fair amount from the state. I would hate to see that those funds getting used and not flowing down to Tucson or Pima County. So I would just ask that whatever we try and push forward, that we ensure that there's, you know, a fair allocation coming down to Pima County, Tucson.
Okay. Aren't those considered allocated though? I thought that there was a 1.2 billion of unallocated funds.
Well, I mean, we're in a couple iterations of reallocated funds, so they've already, you know, the state was significantly deficient in distributing their funds, and so those have been reallocated to the city already and reallocated to the county and being distributed. Marcos might know a bit more. But I know, you know, I don't think that the second request has been fully approved yet for the county. Is that true, Marcos?
I'm not sure. So I think you're right. I think we're still waiting to
A
hear
final approval
back.
from the Treasury, I believe, on that.
Yeah, because I think at our meeting earlier this week, they didn't know yet, and I haven't heard anything since then. So
it's a bit of weird timing, because I know we have some specific requests and I'm a little fearful that, like, oh man, that news could really change the direction they go, and I hope it doesn't. And there's still plenty of funds outside of that, in my understanding, still not totally allocated. But I will add, Jim, I didn't mean to totally thwart that. I do think it's a great idea to try and have a clear direction on what a request would be to use some of those funds for development.
Yeah. And I just realized I completely butchered this agenda item, which is probably what Mary Ann's question is about. So, let me go back to, okay, so I need to going back 2 months. This is not what we were supposed to be talking about, and I apologize. The Housing Trust Fund discussion was intended to be for the city of Tucson to reestablish a housing trust fund. That's a problem. There's too many housing trust funds out there. And so the question that came back from the commission on this that they asked us for help with is, how would this get funded on a recurring basis? So originally it was funded by condo conversion. So any apartments that were converted into condominiums, there was a fee assessed. That fee went into a housing trust fund and that was used to pay for affordable housing. We went through, let me find my notes here. I think we went through and we brainstormed some ideas. Some of the things that we talked about were a 0.1% sales tax increase. There was discussion on a nexus study, which is the impact development fee. An Airbnb tax, which we don't think is legal, but it was something maybe worth exploring. And then say a fee for sales of homes for non-Arizona residents. Those were the ideas that were thrown around at our last meeting. So I think that is
I think
actually.
that last one might violate the Interstate Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution. Just saying.
That's why I laughed.
Just saying.
Yeah. Actually, Jim, my question is actually about the agenda. Shay, I have no agenda, have no idea what the heck happened to it. The agenda that I got was meeting notes from the July 20th meeting. So what is the agenda?
I can put the link here. It's actually posted on our website, our website for the seat for our commission.
So I just want to know, because we were asked for feedback on the agenda for today. And I gave my feedback that we should be talking about home ownership. Is that on the agenda today?
It is actually, yes.
Fabulous,
Sarah, thank
Okay,
you. Got to.
great.
Oh, and Marianne, I just shared the agenda link and I'll make sure that you are included in my group email that I send out. It may have been my fault that you weren't on that, but I will double check.
So I guess I'd like to throw the question out there is, and now that we've had another month to think about this, does anyone have any ideas on how a housing trust fund could be funded in the city of Tucson?
I still like the idea of this Airbnb tax. I got some comments. I think I forwarded them along to a few of you from oh, what's her name? Joanne. She had some comments. And she wasn't sure about Airbnb. I think because because it's, what did she say? The language was let me pull up her email just a second. She said it only adds a tax implication. There's an argument that basically if you put a tax, it's not a breach of state restriction because it only adds a tax implication and does not prevent the property owner from using the property in that way. So you're not actually restricting the use of the property. You're just adding a special city sales tax on top of it. So I thought this could be, and then I was thinking, well, if you really wanted to be safe, could you even make this voluntary, but like highly promote and encourage people to do it? Similar to the way, I don't, maybe that's too loose, but either way, she thought we need to ask our lawyers to look into it, basically ask the city attorney to look into it and see if that could be a possibility.
Marianne?
So Shay, just to be clear, you're talking about Airbnbs?
Yeah, so some communities have already started to do this. They've started to put, basically, they're calling it a luxury tax. You know, it might be like 20% or, you know, somewhere between 15 to 20% extra city sales tax that gets tacked on top of, you know, on top of the sale. And again, this already happens for hospitality. There's a strong argument to be made as to why, you know, hospitality already gets charged the city sales tax, which is a huge piece of our, I've heard it's a big revenue source for the city. So it's not unheard of. It already exists in the hospitality industry. So I think there could be a strong argument made for it.
What about taxes on ADUs? That when they're built?
I mean, why single ADUs out as opposed to all construction? We had this similar conversation about impact fees and permit fees. That's another source in some communities for these funds. Sometimes they do come from, or even construction sales tax. I brought all those up, but Jim doesn't like any of those ideas.
I don't? Wait a minute here.
Yeah, you were the one who was like, no.
You know, we can all vote Jim off the island, so don't.
I
you
don't
know,
remember that. I'm
yeah.
sorry. I don't mean to be that way.
Yeah, I brought it up because I thought, well, why not? Yeah, why not look into our, you know, construction? But again, I don't see why you would single out one unit type versus all forms of construction.
If you're wrapping it in the all forms of construction, that it would be including ADUs. Otherwise, that is something to look at. So I think you have to be specific when you're calling it all construction. ADUs are a little bit different than what we traditionally look at as construction. It's more residential home. type viewpoint. So that's why I'm just bringing up, I think if we say all construction, we should also include ADUs in that.
Right, and they get charged impact fees now. So I mean, again, I don't know. I mean, if you're thinking of that unit type because of its how it contributes to Airbnbs, to me the problem is short-term rentals, right? And that's why the argument could be made for imposing a tax like this, because short-term rentals reduce the available affordable housing supply and are contributing potentially to a problem. Why not, again, try to help use the problem to create the solution? I've always liked this this strategy that you're basically then putting some of that money that people are making a ton of money off of these units, putting that money back into our community.
Yeah.
So just kind of big picture reminder in terms of the commission that, you are appointed by mayor and council, you are being asked to provide recommendations to mayor and council, but you don't have all the answers. Like a recommendation could be explore what potential long-term financing options could be for the housing trust fund. You could say, we know other communities have taxed Airbnb. Can you please look into whether or not this is you can provide recommendations to mayor and council, and you don't have to have all the answers with that. So just big picture reminder there.
Okay. Megan?
Before putting forward a recommendation, I am curious. So I'm not sure that I have this correctly, but I do think that Airbnbs are required to have a transaction, the privilege tax already set up. And I'm curious if one of the issues is that most don't comply with that, and or if that's part of if we have an understanding of what currently is in place for Airbnb holders, and if that's, if part of it is just an issue with actually complying.
Anybody know the answer to that? I don't know either.
So that would be part of it, if we can make a request to understand more about what is currently in place and if there's opportunity to expand on that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before we move on? So just to summarize, seems to me like the three options that are kind of the most possible then would be the sales tax increase, impact development fee for all construction, and potentially an Airbnb tax. Do we agree? Yeah, Marianne?
So I was just looking up occupancy tax collection for Airbnb in Arizona. And it says here that guests who book Airbnb listings that are located in the state of Arizona will pay the following taxes as part of their reservation. An Arizona transaction privilege tax of 5.5%, and a county excise tax 0.28% to 6.5%. So the B&Bs should be paying that somewhere. This is all for the Arizona and Pima County. Just in case, it's on the Arizona Department of Revenue website.
David?
I can't say I'm terribly excited by the thought of paying higher impact fees. Yes, we just got the city to agree to provide subsidies or waivers for impact fees for affordable housing development. I'd hate to see that taketh one, it giveth on the one hand and taketh away on the other.
I think the intent would be that the affordable housing projects would continue to get a waiver.
Well, yes, but I mean, yes, it would still get a waiver, but if the fees go up, the waiver is capped at $150,000. So the net, so then impact fees would still go up for affordable housing development, which is not something that I find a terribly exciting prospect.
Well, okay.
Realize
Okay.
I realize that's greedy on my part, but you know, that's why I'm here, to express the view of the development community, among others.
Yeah. Okay, any other final comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in real quick, Sarah here. We just found out today that Flagstaff does have a bond initiative on the ballot this November for affordable housing. And so, you know, I think that would be interesting to look at. Part of them getting that was that it was included in their plan, right? So they tried it once before and it failed, but now it's included in their plan, and we'll see what happens in November. But you know, just always thinking about that. And then as far as the tax, something that Colorado did in Breckenridge, because they're kind of the same in a lot of their rules in Colorado when it comes to Airbnbs and such, that they ended up doing a fee that was sort of done at the development review level, and it's an Airbnb fee. So if you have to get a permit, and then you get a fee charged by the town of Breckenridge, and that's sort of how because I don't think they're allowed to tax Airbnb potentially, but they did establish a fee inside of the city, and that's kind of their way of getting around that. So that's another potential option as well. So just wanted to mention those two topics.
Good feedback. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I was just wondering too about, especially since we have someone here on the line who's working in advocacy. I always thought that, again, I see your point, David, and I think Jim, you had brought up a similar point before with trying to focus too much on construction, like taxing construction more, right? Will it have the opposite effect, right, of maybe reducing supply, you know, overall, which is not what we want to do. But a citywide tax is something that I think, you know, if it's that 0.1%, how many, you know, 0.01%, you know, pennies on the dollar kind of, you know, that gets spread equally across the city. I don't know, maybe that's more politically and conceptually, you know, maybe more people could get behind it, you know. And to me, that's where, for people who are on the advocacy side, that's what they should be asking for. I've seen a few demands go out, like, you know, from kind of the activist housing section of the world. And the demands, to me, none of them are asking for money. Like, and I feel like really that should be one of the demands, is advocating for money in public spaces for, you know, for housing. And to me, kind of this blanket spread citywide tax seems to be the most equitable way to fund it, where you're not singling out one sector over another, and, you know, just kind of just taking it on as responsibility for the whole city, that yes, we believe that our community deserves decent, safe, fair, you know, access to housing.
Okay, so good. I think if you want to move on, Shay, do you want to do the next one?
Yeah.
Changes.
So I have a list here. I can share. I don't know if it's worth it to, I don't know if I need to share my screen, but I'll just go through it. Let me pull it up. I have it in Word. So I think this got sent out. I don't know if people had time to look at it. David had one comment I saw about moving, but I'll just go through it. So this is just a first pass. I'm hoping we can revise this, and if we need more time to go into these issues, you know, we can. But for the short term, I kind of broke it out into short-term and long-term goals, just because I know some of these are going to take more time than others. So the first one I recommended, I would like to recommend PDSD to reinstate over-the-counter review. I feel like this was an essential expediting tool for both small and large projects. I got into a conversation with the plans reviewer at the counter the other day, and I was talking about this, like, are you going to bring this back? We'll be making, sorry, and I see a question from Megan. Will we be making a request recommendation for greater review to mayor and council? I think. What is this regarding, Megan?
That was on the last agenda item. I wasn't clear on what the direction was, or if we are making that, as Anne said, you know, we don't have to have all the solutions outlined. We can ask for that to be explored more or understood. Is that where we kind of left it, or is it, I wasn't clear. Jim, that was kind of a question for you.
That's my understanding, is we are making a recommendation to mayor and council on what to change. And I don't know how much detail, I mean, if we're gonna say we want to change, you know, section blah, blah, blah of the code from this to this, or if we want to keep it more generic, I don't think that that's been decided. But that was the question that came back from the commission as a whole.
I don't know. Should I continue? I'm not sure now. Okay, well, I'll keep going. So then the other things that I would like them to, recommending PDSD to revisit eligibility requirements for commercial versus residential housing and reduce barriers for smaller neighborhood infill projects up to a fourplex. And then also look at eligibility for commercial tenant improvements for existing buildings. Those are kind of really difficult to do right now. In some ways, maybe unnecessarily difficult considering their existing buildings. Recommend PDSD eliminate the variable setback and return to a 6-foot setback that was previously allowable for R1 and R2. I'm not sure why our setbacks are more restrictive than what the IRC or IBC allow. To me, building distance separation should be determined by the IBC or the IRC. Recommend PDSD create an affordable housing incentive overlay that will work for a variety of development project sizes and types. Recommend PDSD study minimum lot size requirements and explore opportunities to reduce them to create more home ownership opportunities. Recommend PDSD study this remote metering issue for urban infill projects and see if there's an alternative solution. And recommend PDSD study how to create a clear process for legalizing non-conforming and unpermitted structures and explore legal solutions, including utilizing the international existing building code or having property owners sign waivers. And then I had some longer term ones that were about recommending PDSD perform the zoning audit like we talked about, increasing allowable density, creating processes for expedited plans review, creating opportunities for socioeconomically integrated neighborhoods, and opportunities for a range of incomes from rentals to home ownership. And then there would have to be a really robust and inclusive public engagement process if we're gonna relook at the zoning, and comparing the UDC against building and Arizona state statutes. And if the UDC is more restrictive than either, consider relaxing the UDC standard, simplifying and reducing the number of constraints, unifying all city department development standards, including PDSD, Tucson Water, Tucson Fire, and addressing, revisit parking standards, and study the effects of impact and permit fees within the context of trying to encourage the type of development we want. Right now, it's cheaper to do suburban development than it is to do urban infill. And is that really what we want to be doing? And then recommend that PDSD move towards a form-based code and create clear design and use standards based on existing neighborhood character, create housing typologies based on existing housing patterns, create separate development standards for projects that are urban infill versus projects that are suburban. I think those are two different types of developments. And then create clear street typologies based on complete streets, and create clear design use standards for street typologies based on existing street character and complete streets policy, and then parking standards that are in alignment with the goals of housing, street, and residential characters defined. I don't know, that's a lot. I didn't realize it was so much till just. Yes, Jim.
So, so is that your list of, I guess, is that the list of recommendations? I kind of got lost halfway through that.
It's a lot.
But is that the list of recommendations of changes?
Yeah, but I mean, again, I don't know. I just went down the rabbit hole here, but maybe, I don't know. I'm open to, maybe it needs to be 3 or 4 steps backwards removed. I don't know. I'm not.
I was kind of thinking that this was just basically allowing affordable housing projects on different zoning codes where they're not currently allowed, as a way of opening up additional land. That was my interpretation. Maybe I completely missed it. And if we could change materials and things like that, that would also be a benefit. So you're thinking it's primarily the materials used and required that are driving up costs on affordable housing projects, is that?
No, I mean, my whole thing is, I've worked on both large projects, right? Like Blight Tech, and I've also now worked on small. And so to me, at both scales, the setbacks were probably one of the biggest, like one of the hardest in terms of design. Setbacks are probably one of the biggest challenges, because basically the way they are now with the variable setback, every site is variable. So then there's no economy. You can't really recycle plans. Every site ends up being super unique and custom and individual, which that to me also drives up cost. You can't reuse plans a lot of times. It makes it really difficult to do that. So, and then the other issue you come up against is density. So to me, it's density, like just big high level in terms of the UDC, it's density and setbacks, and density again, because it's really hard to max out at either scale, big or small. It's hard to max out even what's allowable in the underlying zoning code. So like say you do your unit count and in theory, you can, I don't know, have 100 units on site. By the time you add all the other constraints in, maybe you can achieve like 75% of that, So again, it's hard right now because there's so many constraints, and the departments are not all in the same room. You have water, fire, you know, on top of PDSD, you know, and I'm not sure that, again, just going through projects, sometimes those standards are not in alignment and they're conflicting.
So one, this is Anne. I actually have to run to get ready for the source of income meeting, but I know Corin is here and Sarah is here. And one thing I wanted to mention, I really appreciate Shay, you putting this list together in terms of like tangible things that that PDSD / the city can look at, could potentially address. And so please know, if you all make this motion and move it forward, we will support you 100%. But did want to mention one thing. In part, we have had some projects anywhere from some emergency shelters all the way to kind of large scale affordable housing projects where we know that there's been some challenges with zoning and some of the code. And so we've also, as many of you know, we've been working with Eco Northwest. They focus on affordable housing and financing and economic studies. And so they're really good when it comes to knowing what other cities have done in terms of incentivizing affordable housing, in terms of changing their codes. They're actually helping rewrite Austin's code right now. And so one of the things we've been proposing, and I throw this out there, is having them provide, kind of look at our code and think about how can it be, how can we potentially make it easier for affordable housing development? How can we incentivize affordable housing development? So those are some things we've been talking about. So one potential option, again, I don't want to slow anything down, so feel free to submit this whenever you want, but trying to invite them to come to the next meeting, and we have a draft scope of work from them, and sort of potentially blending these efforts so that you all could help advise them on what the scope should be, that they, if they look at what some other cities are doing and provide recommendations, that's something that could be a path forward. And sorry, I have to run, but Corin and Sarah are in on that whole conversation, so they can chime in too.
Thanks, Anne.
Bye, Ann. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. Corin, did you want to go? And then Meg.
Sure, yeah, just to chime in a little bit on this list, which I agree, I think it's really helpful just to document this and start to put this on tray so we can play with it and shape it. So I think if what you want to do is put together a set of recommendations to go to the full commission and go to mayor and council to have them initiate something, I think it's really helpful what you did in terms of short-term and long-term, just to kind of like help prioritize what our key priorities as a committee are, because this is pretty big, so it will probably need to be phased. So I think that's great to be clear about what you see as the biggest priorities near term. The other thing I see looking at this list that I wanted to throw out to this committee is that I think there's you may be looking for some different treatment in the code between affordable housing and just market rate housing. That's one of the things I see is like, can we get some incentives for affordable housing in terms of density, height, setbacks? And then other recommendations seem to be more about just making infill of all types more possible to add to our housing supply as a community. And that could also, create more lower cost housing in terms of both homeownership and rentals. So that might be another aspect that you want to differentiate, what things you're looking for to pertain to affordable housing. And maybe that's some of the like nearer term priorities. And then what are some things that would be more expansive and could affect just the ability to create lower cost infill in general. So that's where I see, you know, minimum lot size and some of these other things mentioned as more about just zoning barriers to housing in general.
Yeah, that's a good summation. Thank you, Court. And then Maggie?
Hi, everyone. So has everyone heard about the housing supply study thing that the state legislature is doing? And so I've kind of been listening to those first couple of meetings, and the July 26th meeting had builders and the city of Goodyear and really talking about the whole, you know, development process, which, you know, I'm not a developer. So it's like, it was, oh my God, it was 3-hour long meeting. I fell asleep for part of it. I woke up, I did it last night, but it was so complicated. And I guess one of the things that captured my attention was the redundancies in the whole process. And so I'm wondering if your list, Shay, captures redundancies. There, you know, the developers, the actual builders, like there were Lennar and I forget who else, DR Horton was there. And they went from taking, you know, a raw piece of land and even like zoning, you know, having to redo the zoning all the way to, you know, handing someone the keys. And it was like really long, and all of the things that they have to go through. So, and the cost and the redundancies, and then having to do this again. And so anyways, my thought is, you know, some of these things obviously have to be looked at, but also identifying redundancies in this process, because I feel like that's also part of the issues. And then the other thing is that whole density, the density, I think that should be moved to the 1 to 5 years, because I think that's actually so important. I think right now, with especially with the issues of just housing stock, and you know, on top of that, affordable housing. So that's my opinion. Thanks.
Yeah, I know that's where I, you know, as a housing commission, what I'm unclear of is how, I guess, how to get this more succinct, right? How to get this more succinct, and then what, we are just making a recommendation for someone to study the issues, right? Basically, so our direction really is more for PDSD to study and look into, and maybe we like shorten it to these 3. I like the 3 kind of categories that you mentioned, Corin, which I think kind of more or less target it for me. You know, but, and maybe one of the items, like you're saying, Maggie, is, and that's my biggest frustration when dealing with the UDC is the conflicts. It's not so much redundancy to me as much as it is conflicts. It's conflicts between the UDC and the IBC or the IRC, and then also like potentially state statutes too. And to me, it's like, why what I don't think we want to do is restrict our local zoning code more than what the International Building Code allows for, or what the, you know, the International Residential, or any of the codes, you know, really. And the conflicts also existed to me with density. You know, you have your, when you try to do the, you know, your unit count and you look at your lot, if you're not able to achieve that, trying to figure out what can be relaxed so that you can achieve at least what the underlying zoning in theory allows you to do. And sometimes the conflicts aren't obvious. Like sometimes you might be, you know, you might be allowed like 5 units technically, but then by the time you add in the parking requirements, you can't achieve it, right? Especially on small lots. So it's like, it's multiple layers of conflict. And basically the goal would be to try to look and see how you could allow people to achieve, in theory, the allowable density that they're allowed by right, right? Like that we should be allowed to do at a minimum without, you know, without getting further reduced. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, just for sake of time, we've only got 5 minutes left too, just as a time reminder. So what I think I'll do, Shay, is forward your list that you've created to Eco Northwest. And sort of get a meeting set up with them to explain where you guys are at as a commission and sort of what you've been discussing so far, and let them know all of those key points. And we hopefully can bring them to the next meeting is kind of my goal. So hopefully in September 21st, we could get Eco Northwest to come and we can kind of talk through and hash out, you know, a plan for how to address these zoning changes that then we can take and move forward for recommendation. If you guys are okay with that, I can put that on the schedule. And I know that as we're coming up on time that, you know, Marianne and Maggie, we were going to talk about affordable home ownership. And obviously, I think that that's a more robust conversation than we can do in 5 minutes. So I'll make sure to put that on the front end of the next agenda. And then we'll make sure that that gets, you know, the priority time, and then we can kind of focus with Eco Northwest. If we can get them on that meeting, then we can kind of hash out a few more things with the zoning issues.
So I had a question. So is that's something that's already under contract? They're already under contract with the city to do this?
I might let Corin kind of speak to it, but I think they're one of our consultants that we have like on call. So we've used them for other areas of, you know, research. They've done some studies for us on the Sunshine Mile. They've done some studies for us regarding like ETOD. So they're an on-call consultant that we can tap into. And they have experience with exactly this type of analysis and looking at zoning codes and affordable housing, et cetera, in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, so they don't have anything underway at this moment on this topic, Shay, but as Sarah said, they're part of the team working on the Tucson Norte Sur project. They did a little bit of analysis on Sunshine Mile on that affordable housing bonus. So they're starting to get to know Tucson housing policy and zoning a bit. So we thought they might be a group that would be well positioned to help with some of this analysis.
So Maggie and Marianne, are you guys okay with moving the affordable housing discussion to the first item on the next month's agenda?
Yeah, I am.
I am too.
Okay. So I'll just give HCD updates real quick. We have the source of income public meeting happening right now. So a few staff are probably anxious to get over there to assist with that. That's the in-person one this week, and next week is a virtual. So feel free to sign up and attend. And other than that, I don't have any other updates, I don't think, for HCD.
Okay, the next item is next steps. So next meeting times and dates and items for future meetings. So the next meeting for the full commission is September 1st, and our next affordable housing subcommittee is September 21st. Does anyone have any other items for the meeting, next meeting?
I will be away, but that's no big deal.
All right, thanks, David. And then, okay, well, I think the last is just adjournment. So I think we're done.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Everyone, bye.